What's going on, everybody? It's EricRayweather back here, and in today's video we're going to talk about something that's very interesting, something that a lot of people actually aren't aware of, and we're going to talk about the things that the NFL has actually banned from being in Madden. So, a lot of times on a lot of my videos I'll see complaints, especially on like news related videos, like why doesn't Madden put this back in the game, or why did they take this out of the game, or why can't we have this, this is so easy, why can't we have this implemented into the game? And a lot of times, not every time, probably not even most of the time, but some of the time, the reason we don't have certain things in the game is actually because the NFL won't allow it. And I actually saw a couple comments recently where somebody was asking about something specific, and the guy said, yeah, the NFL doesn't allow this in the game. And a lot of people were commenting under that saying the NFL doesn't have any say over what goes in Madden. All they do is give EA the license. They have no control over the game. This is not true. The NFL has complete control over what can go in the game. It's their license. If they don't want something in the game, if they don't want something representing their brand or think is bad for their brand, they will not let EA put it in the game. And I think this is important to talk about because a lot of times EA will get blamed for something that honestly their hands are tied on. So I thought it'd be cool to make a video and actually talk about this because there are a handful of things that I know are not in the game because of the NFL. Now, I'm sure there's tons of other things that we don't know about, but there's a lot of big ones. So let's talk first things like violent hits and helmets being knocked off of players. I see this request a lot, like why can't we get helmets being knocked off of players? It happens in real life. It used to happen in Madden. The NFL will not allow this. They do not want Madden or EA putting that in the game. And it makes sense when you think about it, because if you see how the NFL has been going, for the last decade, they're trying to get more and more away from the violent hits, the head injuries. Concussions are a big thing. They're trying to, this is why people get fined a lot of times for actually laying legal hits, leading with the shoulder, in the chest, but it's so bang bang, and it looks like maybe they were aiming for the head or they were targeting a defenseless receiver that the refs throw the flag. And it's a very, it's a hard thing to officiate, and there's a real gray area about it. But this is why you don't see this in Madden. You don't see people go up in the air and get lit up. You don't see helmets being popped off because the NFL will simply not allow this to be in the game. So that's one request that I see a lot, and it would be cool to have that in the game because it does happen in real life. But I mean, we're probably still lucky to have the hit stick at this point with the way the NFL is, and they don't want their brand to be associated with, head trauma, concussions, violent hits. Even though that's part of what football is, they're trying to steer clear from as much of that as possible because it's such a big thing now. So that's one thing that the NFL banned from the game. So going with that, kind of just leads into the next thing, is pretty much concussions. If you notice in the game now, especially for those of you that play like franchise mode and stuff like that, you never see the term concussion in Madden anymore. You might see head injury, I believe. I'm not a big franchise guy, but I believe head injuries are still a thing, but you'll never actually see them say somebody got a concussion, or you never see that word. That concussion is just like a word that, if there's one word the NFL hates more than anything else, it's probably concussion. You will never ever see that word associated with Madden. And even in the regular NFL, they don't like their announcers saying that word. Like, yeah, if you refer to it as a head injury, it sounds a lot better than concussion, but it's such a sensitive topic and it's such a big topic. So many players having, brain injuries and trauma from years of playing in the NFL. Like, concussion is something that the NFL, they just completely hate that word. So you'll never see that word associated with Madden ever again. Whereas I believe back in the day, you would see concussion in franchise mode when somebody got a concussion, but you're not going to see that anymore because the NFL, for good reason, doesn't want anything with their brand associated with that. So another thing that kind of goes into this as well, kind of sticks with injuries, is if you remember back in the day, one of the biggest fan favorite things about Madden was the ambulance. When somebody would get hurt, the ambulance would come onto the field and take the player away. And it's funny because the ambulance would actually come on the field and like hit other players. Even like in the earlier days of Madden, it would literally hit players as it came onto the field. It wasn't the best program thing in the world, but it was always like a fan favorite thing. Whenever you saw the ambulance come on the field, it was like a big deal. Like, yeah, I just took somebody out of the game. That has been out of the game for a long time now. I believe like the early 2000s is when that got taken out of the game. And again, that's another thing because the NFL doesn't like to see that. They felt that the ambulance coming on the field put too much of an emphasis on injuries and kind of glorified it, because it was something, as a fan, when you played the game, you liked seeing the ambulance come on the field and take somebody away. It was actually like a moment, like, oh, I hurt somebody, to the point where the ambulance came on the field. NFL doesn't like that. They don't want injuries glorified, for a good reason, but even though it is a part of the game, they, in real life it's going to happen. You can't avoid it, but they can avoid it from being in the video game, from it being overly glorified. So that's why you don't see that in the game anymore, which is not, I mean, it was a fan favorite thing, but that's not something I see a lot of complaints about, like saying we want the ambulance back. I mean, it would be cool to have the cart come onto the field because it is realistic, but the NFL just isn't having it. So another really big thing, probably the biggest thing that is requested and that people want, is when it comes to creating teams. This is a huge thing, because back in the day we had more control over creating teams, and if you look at games like NBA 2K, not because 2K is necessarily better at the game, but the NBA as a league is just, in terms of everything, the NBA as a league is more, open to things. They're free with things. They're not so uptight about everything, even if it go, like, just looking at, like, the protests and stuff like that, the NBA is like, you know what, we'll let our players express themselves how they want. The NFL is like, no, can't express yourselves. Like, it's just the differences in the league. The NBA doesn't have problems with the NBA games having created teams, and if you look at NBA 2K, if you're familiar with it, the customization on creating teams is just out of this world. Like, people can upload their own logos, and you can literally recreate college teams, or just recreate anything you want. You can't do that in Madden. You have certain relocation teams that are already set, and that's it. Those are the only ones you can choose from. And that really, that's not enough for, gamers. We want full control. We want to be able to create our own teams. We want to be able to recreate college teams, because we don't have NCAA anymore. We want to be able to, top to bottom, have full control, but, the mascot's already picked out, the jerseys are already picked out, and you only have a few options. And this is an NFL ruling. They don't want that freedom for people to be able to just create whatever they want. Now, their reasoning on this, or part of their reasoning on this, is because they feel like, they look at it like, and it's really goofy in my opinion, because like I said, the NBA is like, who cares, it's not that big of a deal, but they see it as, okay, people upload content to YouTube or wherever. They don't want to have, let's say, the Patriots being beaten by a created team that resembles a college team, or, just resembles something completely out of the blue. They don't want it to look like, oh, someone just created the Alabama Crimson Tide and they're putting them on YouTube beating the New England Patriots or beating the Philadelphia Eagles. That's part of their reasoning for it. They feel like it takes away from the brand and it devalues, what the NFL is, which is extremely goofy. I mean, because anybody with half a brain knows it's just a video game. We know that the Crimson Tide can't really beat the Patriots. The Crimson Tide can't even beat the Browns. It's completely different talent levels. But that's how they view it. They don't want that complete customization in the hands of players, because, people are going to upload stuff and purposely, try to make it look goofy, have the Patriots losing to college teams, or just have crazy stuff happening, and they don't want that. They just think that's a bad look on their brand, and because it's their brand and it's their license, they have say over that, unfortunately. So that's one thing EA takes a lot of flack for, is not having that, custom ability that, NBA 2K has, but it's not a EA thing. It's an NFL versus NBA thing. The NBA is fine with it because they know it's not a big deal, but the NFL is the no fun league for a reason. That's part of the reason why they're very uptight about these kind of things. This kind of goes into something else that I consider to be very goofy. So if you ever notice in pretty much any other sports game, any other sports series, you see empty stadiums, you see empty arenas, you see in NBA 2K, you have arenas that aren't sold out. You have, on MLB The Show, you see that stadiums aren't sold out. If you're playing a Browns franchise, for example, it shouldn't be, abnormal to see that the crowd might not be sold out because the team isn't very good. Even though I think the Browns actually do support their team really well, even though they aren't very good. But there are teams that don't sell out games because they're simply not good, and people aren't going to pay the money to go to games. You see this in other sports games. The NFL absolutely will not have that in Madden, because again, they think it looks bad. Oh, you have an empty stadium, and it's goofy. It really is, because like I said, everybody else knows it's just a game. Everybody knows in real life, not every team sells out. Some good teams don't even sell out every game. Like, I'm pretty sure the Rams at home in LA weren't selling out their stadium every week, and they were a good team, but they were new to the city, so it's not really like a football city yet. They're kind of trying to like get back into it, and even they weren't selling out every single game, even though they were good. The NFL does not want this in the game. That's why you always see full stadiums, and people complain about that. Why don't I have empty stadiums in franchise mode? It's realistic. Well, once again, you have to blame the NFL for that, because that is something they won't allow. And lastly, this is the last one I'm going to touch on, is another really big one, and it's equipment. That's one of the biggest complaints by a lot of the franchise or just, hardcore sim guys. They want all of the equipment. They want, crop top jerseys because some players wear them. They want, the custom mouthpieces and gloves and custom cleats, because players oftentimes wear custom cleats. They might get fined for it, but they'll still wear them. Colored visors, things like that. Again, the NFL doesn't want this in the game because it breaks their rules. Even though players actually break this rule in the NFL all the time, they just pay the fine for it. The NFL doesn't care. They don't want that represented in Madden. Again, something else that's pretty goofy because it's a video game. Like, who cares? Like, let people have fun on the video game. But the NFL is the no fun league. I'm surprised they allowed celebrations to come back, and that's why we're going to finally have really, really cool celebrations in Madden this year, because they let it come back in real life, so now, cool, it can come back to Madden. But all these other things that they're so strict on, that's why we don't have it in Madden. It's because of them. It's not because of EA. So I just thought this would be a cool video to put out there, because it's a really interesting topic that a lot of people actually don't know is like a problem that exists, that there is a barrier there where the EA has to get permission for everything that goes into the game, because the NFL brand is not theirs. It's not their license, so they have to comply with the NFL, with Roger Goodell, with all of the big wigs. So just thought it'd be an interesting video to make. So let me know in the comments below what you think about it. Do you think the NFL is just crap? Do you think they need to just lighten up a little bit? Just drop it all in the comments below, and as always, I will see you guys next time.